Hello and welcome. I am Ellie Richardson and you are watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is set to meet US President Trump in Washington to discuss ongoing Iran negotiations following recent indirect nuclear talks in Muscat. Iran describes Oman-mediated indirect talks with the United States a positive step towards nuclear negotiations, while emphasizing that it's a non-negotiable that talks will remain not in its missile program. Trump signs an order warning of new US tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Iran, citing a possible 25% rate. The move comes as US-Iran talks continue in Oman, with Trump restarting opposition to Iran nuclear weapons. Thousands gather in Islamabad to bury the 31 killed in a suicide bombing at a mosque. Islamic State claims the attack as residents fear further violence. Millions of Japanese voters cast ballots in snap election called by Prime Minister Sani Takaichi, with polls suggesting her Liberal Democratic Party coalition could win a large majority despite criticism over economic impact of proposed tax cuts and subsidies. Thailand votes in a national election featuring a three-way contest among major political blocs, with coalition talks likely to follow. Hong Kong pro-democracy media tycoon Jimmy Lai will be sentenced on Monday following his convictions under national security and sedition laws in landmark case. Investigators examine a newly surfaced message in the search for the missing mother of US journalist Savannah Guthrie. Authorities say the message is being checked for authenticity as the search enters a sixth day. And for your top story this hour, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to meet US President Donald Trump in Washington on the 11th of February. The two leaders will focus on ongoing negotiations with Iran. Last Friday, US and Iranian officials held indirect nuclear talks in Muscat, Oman, with both sides agreeing to more discussions soon. Iran has stressed its right to enrich uranium, while its missile capabilities were not discussed. Meanwhile, Netanyahu insists that any deal must address Iran's ballistic missile program. Tensions remain high after military actions against Iran's nuclear sites last year, and any breakdown in talks could escalate into further conflict. We are now being joined by Major General Sudakaji, who's a senior strategic and international affairs expert. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Why does Netanyahu want Iran to include missiles and Iran's regional allies, not just the nuclear issue? Oh. Sorry, we're just experiencing some problems as we can't hear you. We're just going to come back to you hopefully soon.
Am I audible?
Oh, hello. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. Why does Netanyahu want Iran talks to include missiles and Iran's regional allies, not just the nuclear issue?
Good morning, Gaili. Thank you for inviting me for your show. It's quite simple that Israel wants to be secure, safe, and free of any threat from either Iran or any country in the Arabic world or in the Middle East. That is to actually say the least. Back to you, please.
Is Israel pushing conditions that make negotiations with Iran harder or more realistic?
Again, a very simplistic response from my side. It's going to make the negotiations harder because the goalposts are being shifted from the nuclear enriched uranium for the nuclear warhead purposes, and which Iran, indirectly or directly, they have indicated they are prepared to negotiate and bring down the percentage of enrichment from whatever it is today, more than 60%, down to 30%. And also from unofficial circles, I'm given to understand they are prepared to lower it further. There is a process to actually bring down the enrichment. But adding the ballistic missiles and also reining in the proxies, the Houthis, the Hezbollah, the Hamas, and there are a couple of others, militia also, to stop them altogether. Iran is not in agreement, and therefore this particular dialogue may continue without any substantive outcome at the end of the day. Back to you, Ellie.
Do you think Trump will back Israel's tougher demands or focus more on keeping talks alive with Iran?
Options for Trump are more than one. First and foremost is not to lose patience, have strategic patience, talk it out. Because it is Donald Trump in 2018, I suppose, yes, where during his first tenure, he is the one who impulsively pulled out of JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action 2015, in which P5 members plus one, Germany also was there, with great difficulty, long years of negotiation. They all had come together and they were actually progressing in a very substantive manner with Iran to prevent Iran from going nuclear. Now, having pulled back or withdrawn from that kind of a platform, and now to say and expect Iran to again do it, somehow it is highly contradictory. It doesn't stand to logic. So, therefore, the first option that comes to my mind is that diplomacy and dialogue sooner or later will pay dividend, but it is not certain whether it will happen during Donald Trump's time or not. Second option could be a mix of diplomacy dialogue, that is the carrot and stick. That is when you talk about the carrot and stick, somebody has to be Mutt and somebody has to be Jeff. Between Israel and US, I don't think both either of them will have any soft partner. Both of them are hard partner. But Donald Trump would do well to become a soft partner, and Netanyahu would do the job of being a hammer. So that is how the military technique actually applies when you are dealing with a stakeholder which is opposing you. That could be a combination of diplomacy and also the kinetic component. The third one is that you rule out anything, everything, and you go in full hog for the kinetic component. So therefore, Donald Trump will do well to exercise these multiple options which are available, and it is going to be spread over a long spectrum of time frame, short term, medium term, and long term, at different levels, strategic level, regional and local level. At the moment, the Arabic countries, most of them, are not in agreement with Donald Trump going in for any kind of offensive or attack against Iran. They have refused to allow their use of the airspace of the respective countries. So, therefore, Donald Trump would do well to buy some time, win over these people who are in support of Iran, and after having consolidated, maybe the time will tell him when to go in for. At the moment, it is not conducive. Donald Trump is unlikely to go in for the military offensive. Back to you, Ali.
And could this meeting increase pressure on Iran or raise the risk of regional escalation?
there is a risk of regional escalation. There is a risk of regional escalation because no country, and that too of the stature of Iran, this is a civilizational power, and to expect Iran to forego its ballistic missile capability, incidentally, a word or two about its missile capability. It is one of the countries in the world, despite all sanctions, has got a huge arsenal, huge inventory of missiles of different ranges. At the moment, it does not have ICBM capability, but there are reports to suggest that Iran is carrying out very serious trials and development of ICBMs with a range of 10,000 to 12,000 kilometers, which can reach the east coast of America or the mainland. But they have not been successfully operationalized or tried out anytime soon. They have missiles which are of the range of 2,000 to 3,000 kilometers. Second thing they have is the hypersonic missiles, which are deadly and dangerous. No radar in the world available can either, they can detect, but they cannot intercept. They pass through a very narrow a space of 100 feet to 1,000 feet gap of air defense, which is available with US and Israel. So therefore, at the moment, you do well that the Iran would not like to forego its missile program, because with great difficulty they have gone in for these kind of systems for safety and security. They may accept all these proposals provided there is some guarantee by the US, some guarantee by Israel they are not going to be attacked in future, which is a very tall order to expect. And I don't visualize, don't see that the Iran domination, because there is another angle also you got to be mindful of. It is called as the Umar's contestation. In the Arabic world or the Islamic world, there are three countries contesting against each other for their supremacy. One is Turkey, second is Saudi Arabia, and third is Iran. Iran has taken extraordinary steps to prove to Saudi Arabia and Turkey that despite being a Shiite-dominated nation, it is still helping out Hamas for the larger cause of the Islamic world. So these are the kinds of contestation and the spirit behind the contestation which are actually preventing Iran to forego the missile capability and the proxies that they are actually employing to target Israel. Back to you, Ali.
Thank you. Don't go too far, as we will be back to you very shortly. Greenland's Foreign Minister Vivian Motzfeldt has said that while talks with the US are positive, they're not yet where Greenland wants them to be. Motzfeldt added it's too early to predict where the discussions will lead. Speaking alongside her Danish and Canadian counterparts, she also welcomed the opening of Canada's new consulate in Nuuk, the capital of Greenland. Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen mentioned that the new meeting with the United States are already scheduled. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand stated that the new consulate would strengthen both economic and security ties between Canada and Greenland. Let's listen in.
Yesterday we had the historical opening of the Canadian consulate here in Nuuk. This provides an important connection between our countries and peoples. The consulate will serve as an essential bridge for future cooperation as we work to secure peace and sustainability in our shared Arctic region. Greenland is facing difficult times, and I want to thank Canada for being a steadfast friend and supporter of our country.
So our work here from a diplomatic standpoint is going to serve many Canadians, many people of Greenlandic and Danish descent, and we look forward to people-to-people ties, especially amongst Northerners and Inuit.
So I'm just pleased and happy to be here, and I really think that this new consulate in Nuuk, together with other countries also opening diplomatic representations in Nuuk, yesterday also France, brings a lot of new opportunities for Greenland to embrace the world.
We are now being joined again by Major General Sudhakar G. Thank you so much for joining us back here. Can positive dialogue translate into concrete agreements without any clear timelines or guarantees? And what would success look like for both sides?
Elib, this has to be understood in the backdrop of what has happened in the recent past. Donald Trump was hammer and tong in capturing or annexing Greenland. So all these activities which are unfolding by the day are gradually in response to those kind of contingencies. It's a different issue that Donald Trump, because of international pressure and especially from the European Union and the NATO members, he has backed out from Greenland, but one doesn't know how is he going to take it forward, because something that comes into Donald Trump's mind after a couple of months, he may suddenly, bounce back to similar kind of objective and get after Greenland and the European Union and the NATO members. So therefore, to answer your question in specific, there is a strategic realignment within the NATO forces, and to say the least is that there is a fracture which will take a lot of time to repair, and that fracture is predominated by lack of trust. When everything which was responsible to hold the team together for past several years, from 1949 to 2026, despite all differences, actually is subjected to something like lack of trust, which has been experienced in the recent past, is unlikely to bridge any kind of gaps or differences in the opinion, as also the course of action. Hence, after France, I believe France has opened the consulate, and now Canada in the Greenland, and therefore my take on the whole issue is that this is going to build up and result into a kind of a permanent fissure between the that is transatlantic countries and the European Union or the NATO members across the Atlantic in Europe. Back to you, Eli.
And does Greenland's cautious tone suggest confidence in its leverage or concern about US intentions?
Definitely concern. US intention is very, very doubtful after the Venezuelan operation and after what has happened or what is being threatened to be done in Cuba. In between, we had the Greenland. Things have calmed down a little bit for past couple of days. Maybe there are some silent strictures issued by the Supreme Court, because the tariff issue is yet to be heard in the Supreme Court, which was expected in the first week of January or latest by last week of January. Maybe US Constitution allows the Supreme Court to direct the president through different calibrated means so as to calm down. Otherwise, you will be subjected to checks and balances existing within the system, which the Supreme Court is empowered to. So one really can't say, with he being a transactional and unpredictable leader, things may come up again. So therefore, to answer your question, I would say it definitely raises lots of concern in the rules-based international order in 21st century, and particularly when a thing like this is happening for an organization which has been in existence for more than 75 years and which has been holding out for good. So therefore, they will look at everything with suspicion, because once bitten, twice shy. Once bitten by a snake, even a thread will look like a snake. Back to you, Eli.
And what domestic, political or economic challenges might affect Greenland's negotiating position or the ultimate outcome of these talks?
Domestic politics, as far as the Greenland is concerned, there are far and few, 57,000 people living in Greenland, and Greenland is a huge mass of geography, around 2,700 kilometers north-south, around 14 to 1,600 kilometers east-west, and the coastline being 34,000 kilometers. In the Arctic, 2/3%, 80 meters with ice cover. So the domestic politics is going to be driven by, as per my assessment, by the stance which Denmark has been extending till date, that it is a country, the sovereignty of Greenland, it enjoys a partial sovereignty, autonomous status. People say that the semi-autonomous to autonomous status, and it is part of Denmark. As per the rules-based international order, no, there doesn't exist any scope for invasion by an ally or a partner like US. So that is one thing they will definitely fight it tooth and nail. But unfortunately, they do not have the military capability. So therefore, the present or the current one of trade deal FTA, I think it is a good harbinger of seeking partnership with like-minded countries. The European Union has gone in for an FTA with India. This is going to augur well to bring in partners which are going to stand by their requirement in times ahead, whether it is military capability or the economic might. Now, coming to the US domestic policy, as of now, the domestic policy in the United States is dead against the Greenland concept and annexing any kind of thing, although it has been building up since previous tenure of Donald Trump. Notwithstanding that, this is giving out a wrong message. I'm sure the Supreme Court of United States of America is seized with this new idea, and in times ahead, or for all you know, while we are discussing, they might have already given out very stringent directions to the leadership in the United States to abide with and not to go beyond a limit which will infringe upon the rules-based international order. Ellie.
Thank you so much, Major General Sudhakaji, for joining us here today on NewsX World. Polling stations in Thailand open today as the country heads to the polls in a highly anticipated general election. Yuchananan Wongswat, the nephew of jailed former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, cast his ballot in Bangkok, urging voters to make their voices heard and calling for national change. With the political landscape still shaped by past coups and judicial actions, no single party is expected to win an outright majority, making coalition negotiations likely. The election also comes amid growing concerns over Thailand's border dispute with Cambodia and the economic struggles exacerbated by the pandemic. We are now being joined by Dr. Satoru Nago, who's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joining us from Tokyo. Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World. When Thaksin's nephew says Thailand must change, what kind of change are voters actually looking for?
Of course, there is many background, but at the same time, indeed, the Thailand politics is maybe entering one kind of cycle. Then there are the two big parties, which is the governmental side backed by army or the government, pro-government people, and other side is the Thaksin's party. And one more is recently they exist, and this cycle of this party is continuing for a long time because of in the parliament, these three parties got 1/3 of the parliament, and every time coalition partner decide what kind of government, and go and return, they're always changing, and the government is not stable. So that's why if the Thailand want to continue the long-term policy or something, the decisive policy, in this case, the government should be stable. But the view from this parliament situation, always Thailand's politics is not stable. So only the king is maybe stabilizer, but in the parliament, indeed, this is not stable. So that's why Thailand must change is true.
Thank you so much for joining us here today on NewsX World and giving us your insights. Thousands of protesters marched through Milan on Saturday against the Winter Olympics, with a small group clashing with police and setting off fireworks. The demonstrators fired flares and threw stones, prompting police to respond with water cannons after an otherwise peaceful march. Police were on high alert after the violent clashes in Turn last weekend. Protesters raised banners protesting the use of artificial snow, tree felling and a housing crisis in Milan. They also criticised the Games as unsustainable, both environmentally and socially. Some call the Olympics a Disneyland for tourists, while locals face soaring costs. Let's listen in.
Un corteo che raggruppa sindacati di base, movimenti sociali, associazioni cittadine per protestare contro delle Olimpiadi che sono state costruite soltanto in favore dei ricchi, per favorire la speculazione edilizia, per favorire l'ingrassamento degli imprenditori tramite le fette di torta degli appalti.
Allora, oggi scendiamo in piazza contro le Olimpiadi che sono l'ennesima grande opera che sembra vogliono farla sembrare un'opportunità per tutti i cittadini, per gli studenti, quando in realtà non si tratta che speculazione finanziaria, speculazione edilizia e cementificazione.
Allora, le ragioni sono varie e molteplici, sono sia politiche che economiche. In particolare oggi qui siamo in piazza rappresentando con questi appunto larici, gli 800 larici che sono stati tagliati a Cortina per costruire una pista da bob che tutti sappiamo che poi sarà probabilmente mai più utilizzata, non essendo per noi uno sport nazionale, sarà sicuramente come un altro scempio di costruzione che verrà poi abbandonato con ovviamente dispendio di denaro pubblico.
The Washington Post is undergoing major leadership changes as CEO and publisher Will Lewis steps down, effective immediately. This announcement comes just days after the storied newspaper, owned by Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, faced intense criticism over significant job cuts. The cuts angered many readers and sparked a wave of backlash. In an internal email shared publicly, Lewis explained that it was the right time for him to leave. Jeff D'Onofrio, who joined the Post as Chief Financial Officer last year, will take over as the new CEO. This marks a pivotal shift in leadership amid ongoing challenges at the publication. That's all we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.